So welcome everyone to today's BGSF webinar, 5 Attributes to a Successful Career, hosted by former CFO and author Carla Mashinski. I'm Brittany Barradin, the marketing specialist for the professional division of BGSF and a member of our CPE program committee. So before we begin, I'd like to mention a couple of reminders. To earn 1 hour of CPE credit today, you'll need to attend for the entire 50 minutes and answer 3 of the 4 polling questions that will come up randomly during the presentation. If you don't need CPE credit today, we do invite you to still answer the polling questions. We really appreciate your insight. We can all benefit from seeing the results of each poll from everyone. So, please answer them if you can. You can only respond to polling questions if you were logged in through the desktop app or a mobile app, Zoom Cloud Meetings or Apple or Google Play, but you cannot answer the polling questions by dialing in. Within 1 week of completing an evaluation form that we'll receive later today, we will send you your CPE certificate. If you do have any questions, please enter them directly into the chat section. Everyone will remain muted, but you can ask questions in the chat section. Please set your chat to everyone. I believe it pops up just to panelists. So if you could set it to everyone so that we can all see and engage in a chat, that would be great. Also at the end, we will be announcing the 4 winners of the signed copy of Carla's book. So please hang on to the very end so you can find out if you are a winner. Okay. A little bit about BGSF before we get started. We are one of the fastest growing publicly traded workforce solutions firms in the US. We were created in 2007, formerly BG Staffing. We are now operating through 91 locations, 46 states, DC, and Canada. Within our professional division, BGSF has 10 specialized brands nationwide, specifically in accounting and finance, HR, legal and admin, information technology, managed services, and cybersecurity. Our goal is always to connect the right talent to the right opportunities, whether organizations need project consulting, managed services, staff augmentation, direct hire, or executive search services. So now I'm going to throw it over to Elaine Priestman, a senior client service manager and a senior recruiter at BGSF, who's going to introduce our fantastic speaker today.
Thank you, Brittany. I have had an opportunity to know Carla Mashinski for a number of years. We're thrilled that she is with us today. Carla is a very dynamic global business leader, experienced board member, and has over 37 years of experience dedicated to the energy industry. As a CPA, she possesses a very strong combination of business acumen, strategic expertise, and brings deep experience as a C-suite executive, financial expert, board director, and audit committee chairperson of many public companies. Carla recently retired, but I think she is busier than ever. And she is recognized as one of a small group of women in the energy industry to have achieved C-suite status, multiple concurrent board positions. She is recognized for her many achievements, multiple awards and honors, and we are very pleased to have Carla with us today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Carla. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Elaine, for that nice introduction. I appreciate that. And I'll tell you a little bit more about who I am and why I'm here. As Elaine said, I have over 35 years in the energy industry with the list of companies below. And I've been fortunate to work for a range of large and mid-sized companies, both public and private, with many different cultures. And as Elaine mentioned, I am the former Chief Financial Administrative Officer at Cameron LNG, and I've had similar positions in the past. I've also had the opportunity to serve on public company boards. Currently, I'm on the board of Primoris. It's a construction company in Dallas, about $4 billion in revenue. I'm the audit committee chair, and I just recently joined the board of a private company, BKV, which is a natural gas company. Now, I'm not here to tell you how great I am and that I have everything figured out, because I have made many mistakes in my career and that others can learn from. And in the book that I've written, which is the 5 Attributes to Successful Career, I'm extremely vulnerable. I give examples about my career and things that were successful and things that weren't so successful. And some of my friends have said, I'm not sure I would have been so vulnerable if I were you, but from my perspective, I think it's important that we talk about those things, talk about the things that don't go well in our career and how we manage those as we progress and move forward. But I will tell you that if someone would have told me 5 years ago that I was going to write a book, I would have told you, you are crazy. It's not something that I had on my bucket list, but what happened was I was inspired to talk about this subject and write the book when I was asked to speak to organizations after receiving some of these recent awards. And what happened was I noticed that people were really interested in my my career and how I had been successful in my 37 years. And one of the questions I got was, what did I think were the attributes to my successful career? And I thought, wow, that is a great question. And I gave it some thought. And there were actually 5 attributes that I felt like impacted my career success. And I'm going to walk through those, and I'd love to hear any feedback in the chat or any questions as we go through these, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. But before we do that, I think that we have our first polling question. And that question is going to pop up here in a minute that you can answer. But the question is, based upon an honest assessment of your career, at this point in time, are you ahead of your projection of where you thought you'd be, on target with your career aspirations, have a desire to propel your career further, haven't given it enough thought? So we'll give you a minute to answer that, and then we'll get some feedback on what everyone thinks and talk a bit about that before we go into the presentation. You should, we've got a question on how do, the question should pop up. Okay, so we answered it. So you should have a pop-up that has the question, and you should be able to answer it from that pop-up. And then you submit it. Okay. Brittany, okay, this is interesting. So we've gotten some feedback. It looks like almost half have a desire to propel their career further. So just slightly less than half. And then 33% on target with your career aspirations. Congratulations to you. And particularly congratulations to the 13% that are ahead of their projections of where they thought they would be. That's fantastic. And then about 5% who haven't given it enough thought. So hopefully after we have this conversation, you will have the opportunity to give that some thought and think about what you want to do next. So if we move forward to the next slide. So the first attribute from my perspective to a successful career is to be good at what you do, but never satisfied. In my mind, this is a given, and it gets you in the door. And in my career, I often wondered what would get me in the door to those exciting opportunities that I would dream of. And my guess is maybe you've done the same thing, but my path from a very humble upbringing in East Tennessee, where no one in my family went to college, to the CFO seat has really taught me that there are certain skills and attributes that open those doors. And bottom line, what we do and how we do it is a reflection of who we are and really gets us in the door. And to be better than we are today, we need to be good at both those technical skills and the behavioral skills. The technical skills is what we do and the foundation for being good at what we do. And to show how serious we are about our profession, I think it's important that we obtain certifications in our particular fields. For example, getting a CPA, many of you here today want to get CPE for your CPA license. And I think this really just sets us apart. And then the other is the behavioral skills, which is how we do it. And behavioral skills are just as important, if not more important. And then when I refer to never satisfied, I mean we need to continue to stretch ourselves so we don't become complacent and we continue to remain relevant. We can't be satisfied with the status quo because things are always changing. And throughout this presentation, I've included some quotes that speak to me, and hopefully they'll also speak to you. This first one here is, one's mind, once stretched by a new idea, never regains its original dimensions. And, I think that's so true. We need to continue to always see how we can learn and grow. And there are a number of things you can do to be good at what you do, but one that I personally struggled with is finding my voice and the right voice. And that brings together both those technical and behavioral skills. So if we move to the next slide, I'm a natural introvert. And that being a natural introvert, I'm very satisfied with my head down and getting the work done. Early in my career, I started my career with Shell Oil Company. I felt as if there's always someone smarter than me at the table, and they should be talking instead of me. And if you think about it, with Shell Oil Company, and they even tell people, we hire the best and the brightest. So I'm like, well, why should I be talking about things? There has to be someone smarter than me. And I learned that this is referred to as the sticky floor syndrome. And the sticky floor describes someone in business who self-sabotages their career advancement due to self-doubt. And they end up being stuck to the floor of their career. And once I realized that those people advancing in their careers are those who were able to give those polished presentations and present ideas in meetings. So that's something I had to work on. And so I refer to this as finding your voice, which is recognizing you have value and speaking up to let others know you have value. And looking back over my career, I wish I had found my voice so much earlier. And when I talk about using the right voice, is finding the voice to foster that environment of openness and teamwork, and we need to make sure that we include that in our thought process. And there are two quotes here that I absolutely love. Madeleine Albright said, "It took me quite a long time to develop a voice. And now that I have it, I'm not going to be silent." And then the other quote here is more about finding the right voice. When you find the courage to use your voice, it has the power to positively inspire and change the lives of others. It's one of the special gifts you have to offer the world, and something to be cherished and championed, never hidden. I love that. So, once we gain our voice and use it in the right way, we have to ask ourselves if good will come from what I'm about to say. If not, think about how to say it differently, or maybe not say it at all. And one of my peers used to say, what comes to your mind doesn't need to automatically come out of your mouth. So, so I think it's important that we think about what we say, but we don't have the fear to step up and make those comments and feedback and ideas where a company can really have the advantage of the input from everyone and really have that diverse set of perspectives. So I think that's important. That's one of the things that for me, I had to work on to be able to be as good as I could be. So if we move to the next slide, which is the second attribute, is adding value and looking ahead. And this is what gets you at the table where those decisions are made. Just like finding your voice, you have to find your value. This is about understanding the objectives of your organization and discovering how you can add value to those objectives. And when you start doing that, that's when you're invited to the table and people are interested in what you have to say. You know, if you work hard, but you're working on the wrong things, it may not be beneficial to the organization in the big picture. So I think it's important that we think about it from that perspective. But what happens is, you know, we all come to work thinking that we're going to add value. And what happens is, you know, we end up having difficulty in adding value because of the distractions in the workplace. And the challenge that we have is to make the impactful contribution while not being distracted by the noise. And I'll talk a little bit about this on the next slide or so. But looking ahead, I want to talk about that. That relates to the changing environment and our changing business environment, so we can add value today and tomorrow and be ready to anticipate and adjust to change, because change will be happening, as we've seen, at a very rapid rate. So if we advance to the next slide, I think we have our second polling question, maybe. Yes. So, so this next polling question is, what do you think is distracting you the most from adding the most value to your organization? Is it finding, recognizing, and appreciating your value, managing all the demands, managing the less than great boss, managing office politics, or being able to lead among all the change that's happening? We'll just give a minute or so for everyone to submit their response to this polling question. And I'm anxious to see what the responses are. Okay. Are we getting enough responses in? And then, of course, remember, if you want to get the CPE, you need to respond. Okay, this does not surprise me at all. This is exactly probably what I thought. Managing all the demands, that's 54%. And then spread relatively even across the board otherwise. And thank goodness there's only 5% that managing the less than great boss. So with that response, I want to kind of move into our next slide and talk about that. Managing all the demands. You know, lots of times we get caught up in this daily chaos of trying to answer hundreds of emails, running from meeting to meeting, answering that never-ending phone calls, that we end up not adding value. And in the past, that chaos made me feel important and needed. But after time, what was happening is I realized how misdirected that thought process was. And I was not really adding value. I was only running myself ragged. So I learned a few things on how to manage in that situation. So the first one is the outpace model. And I developed this with a organizational development leader. She's actually, in my mind, one of the leading organizational development leaders. And we'll go through the outpace model here in a minute. And but the second one is minimizing the meetings. Some companies love meetings, and it's hard to accomplish anything when you're moving from meeting to meeting. And there were so many days I would be driving home at night and I would be thinking, what did I accomplish today other than going to meeting? And then I started thinking, okay, how can I manage this? And so what I started doing is asking in advance if I could get a copy of the presentation or the material in advance of the meeting. And if it was something that it was just information and I understood by reading the material, the objective, I would call the organizer and say, I appreciate the information. Is there anything else, any other reason that I need to attend? Can I delegate this to someone else and get an update for later? Or is there any other important information that I know about? And then ask if you can get that update after the meeting. So that really helped me to minimize the number of meetings. And then the next thing is hiring the A team. And, I can't say enough about the A team and the fact that we need to not be afraid of having people that are smarter than us and involved around us and involved in what we're doing and on our teams, because it really improves the productivity and efficiency, because everyone is motivated to succeed when you hire the A team. And the next one is focus on adding value, because what we focus on is what we do. And then the last is time to reflect. It's so easy to get on autopilot and get caught up trying to meet all those demands. But reflection really allows us to pause and assess the situation. And the quote here, I love this, because if we can so quickly get ourselves caught up in trying to do everything that comes across our desk, but this says focus on doing the right thing instead of a bunch of things, and focus on those things that really are going to make that impact. So if we advance the slide to the next, just want to talk a little bit about the outpace model. And, this is where I felt like that, from my perspective, I'm going to give you an example from my perspective. What I was doing is I would get an email and I would read the email and I would say, okay, I need to deal with that, but I'll deal with it later. And then I would come back. If I had time to come back to the email, I'd come back to it and then I would read it a second time. And I've spent twice as much time and hadn't accomplished anything. So I said, how do I address this where I can be more efficient? So the first decision I realized that I needed to make is, do I own it or should I outsource it? So I realized that I don't have to do everything myself. And, It doesn't have to be mine to personally accomplish. And sometimes there are people that are much better at it and would result in a much better product if you ask for their help. And if you outsource it, you don't want to micromanage it, but you want to oversee it to make sure that it gets accomplished. But if it's something that you feel like you need to own because it's something that, you know, adds value and you are the best to accomplish that, I think there's three decisions that need to be made. First is, you know, is it something you really need to make the decision, does this add value? If it doesn't, then just oust it. It's not important. We get a lot of unnecessary information that comes across our desk and things, you know, that need to be deleted, you know, hit that delete button. And then the next is, if it's something that you can answer in say 5 minutes, then, and lots of times you get email requests that just say, you know, can you tell me where I can find this, or what, or a quick answer to a question, then just answer it and get it off your plate. Now, but if it's something that is going to take time, where you need to think about it and compose an answer, what I found I had to do is schedule time on my calendar, organize it, because what would happen would be, if I didn't organize it, time would get away from me and I would not have allocated the time to be able to respond and to that request and give it the right level of effort that it should be. So for me, this was something that, and it's fairly simple to do, kind of put this into your head and think about this as you start getting requests. So you know, then if we kind of move forward to the next slide, I'm going to take you to what I see as the third attribute. The third attribute is to build a strong, adaptable team. And I talked about that earlier as to getting the A team. And that strong, adaptable team can mean the difference between having average results or those exceptional results. And we all want to be a part of that team that produces those exceptional results. And the A team is the team that produces the results that a group of individuals working together independently could never do. So you may be thinking, okay, am I part of the A team, or how do I get to be a part of that A team? And I did a bit of research on this and really came down to a few points. And the first one is that everyone has to have that deep sense of commitment to the purpose of your team or the organization. And then highly driven with goals that are beyond the norm. So, you know, if you think about this when you're starting to put goals together, think about it that if you want to be the A team, you need to really think about those goals that are not just your average goals. Having that mutual accountability, and, you know, which also means the clarity that as to what each member brings to that team. And then you want to have highly skilled and complementary skills, and that you trust each other. So what I think has to happen is you really need to have that time where you can sit together, brainstorm, talk about, you know, what is the purpose of your organization, talk about what the roles are, and you have that mutual accountability to each other, and it can grow and develop over time. And with this, we can make monumental things happen instead of letting them happen to us. And, you know, I am a big believer that we can build the A team just like we can develop our leadership skills. And the things that we need to do to make that happen is to provide clarity, have that open mind to new ideas, and share that accountability among the organization. The other couple of points that I have here is the importance of company culture and diversity. And that I think that's also very important to having that strong, adaptable team. Every company has a culture, and that culture can lead to increased employee engagement and performance by exhibiting those traits of appreciation, teamwork, transparency. And the culture is, someone has put in the chat that how important that culture is. And we're all responsible for that culture. And we build that strong culture by bringing forward our values and recognizing individuals and allowing for individual feedback, and that diversity and openness of new ideas and thoughts that can lead us to those exceptional results. And we all have that role in changing the world as it relates to diversity. And the quote here, I love this quote, and I use it. Pat Summitt was the coach at University of Tennessee ladies basketball team, and she was very famous. She took the U.S. to the Olympics, had a lot of individual championships, but her quote is, responsibility equals accountability equals ownership. And a sense of ownership is the most powerful weapon a team or organization can have. I think that's pretty powerful. So if we advance the slide to the next, oh, we have a polling question, another polling question here. What has been most instrumental in your career advancement? Is it that an organization's culture that supports career development, surrounding yourself with the A team, having a strong mentor and supporter, personal determination, perseverance, and resilience? Okay, we'll give it a minute for everyone to give their results. Okay. All right. Very interesting. 41% indicates personal determination, perseverance, and resilience. Then followed by having a strong mentor. And then surrounding yourself with the A team is 14%. An organization's culture that supports career development of 18%. So very good. So I'm going to talk about this personal determination here in a bit. But before we get to that, I want to talk about accountability. Building a strong, adaptable team really is based upon accountability. And, if I ask you if you are accountable, you're going to automatically say, of course I'm accountable. And you might even be insulted that I would even question your accountability. But we need to think about this differently. The measure of accountability is whether others think we are accountable. That's a little bit differently, and if we work from that perspective, we should ask if we hold ourselves accountable to others. For example, did we provide the necessary information to other team members so they can meet their commitments. When we say that we're going to do something, do we do it by the date and time that we promised? And so to think about it from that perspective, I developed what I call this accelerated accountability with these 6 steps. And the first one is to, accept that accountability and the responsibility for it by being personally committed to the success of the team. The second is to act. After accepting the responsibility, the next step is to take on that action to help others. And remembering that accountability is our action in relation to others. We should be asking what we can do to help others to achieve the overall team objectives. Next is to advise. Since others really are the judge as to if we are accountable, we should be proactively communicating the status of our commitment to that individual. Because if we aren't communicating the status, people will automatically think that it's not getting done. So we give them periodic updates on the progress that we're making. And then the next is to advocate. Advocate and publicly support the need for accountability, and that lower standards just aren't acceptable. And then throughout this process, you may have to adjust. And we've found that we've had to do that over the last couple of years for sure. But we may have to make adjustments to what we thought would happen because things are always changing. And then finally, achieve the results. Working to continuously lead that accountability by solving problems and not creating problems. Someone, once told me we need to be problem solvers, not problem creators. And that's really stuck with me. And I liked that thought process. So if we move forward to the next slide. Okay, 4th attribute is build alliances, personal and strategic. And the reason I think this is so important is because most relationships in the business environment is very transactional in nature. I need to get this information from you. And so I have this transactional relationship to be able to get what I need. And I think in order to have a much better outcome, I think it's important that we look at it from building alliances where we actually get to know the person and we understand what drives them. And I think the first one is, and there's 3 pillars to this here. The first one being authentic. Authenticity starts in the heart. And I love that quote. And I really felt like the best way to build that authentic relationship is to learn about the person, what drives them, and lots of times if you look at their workspace, if they have pictures of their family or, vacations, those are things that are important to people if they have it there in the workspace, and that can help you start making the connection with the person by asking about those particular things. The second is to take action and follow up. One of the things I think is so important is to connect people in your network. And people so easily say that, I know someone I need to introduce you to, and I'd love to introduce you to XYZ, but most times it doesn't happen. And you think, man, that's the easiest thing to do is to connect people. And, the quote here is, authenticity is more than speaking. Authenticity is also about doing. Every decision we make says something about who we are. Wow. That says a lot. And that's something that, if you really think about it, has so much truth to it. And then the last pillar here is do not expect anything in return. Earn your success based on service to others, not at the expense of others. And I had someone describe that to me as corporate karma. If you give, then you will receive 10 times tenfold back. And I really believe that. And I think building those alliances will make such an important difference in your career success. So if we advance the slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about being a mentor. And I think this is really important in building alliances that can have a life-changing impact on a person. You know, I personally am the model of the difference mentoring can have on a person's life. You know, I had a teacher in high school who pointed out to me my strengths and encouraged me to go to college and major in accounting. I would not have done that. I would not have gotten a college degree if it wasn't for that teacher. And that event was instrumental in changing the direction of my life. And, you know, many people ask me, well, how do I find a mentor? And in my mind, I think it's important that you're always on the lookout for someone that you admire. And you can say, go up to that person and say, you know, I admire you, you know, how you handled this meeting or how you did XYZ. Would you mind meeting with me to talk about my career? And I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, and maybe 10 times out of 10, that person's going to meet with you because you have just given them a compliment, and they're going to be willing to share their career, because people like talking about themselves. And so I think, you know, this is a good way to kind of start that conversation and meet people to get that advice and really be prepared. And one of the things that I've learned recently is that you should, as you start to develop your mentors, you should look at them as your personal board of directors. And, you know, if you think about it from a company's perspective, they have a board of directors to help the company be successful. And each one of those directors brings something different to the table. So you probably want to get a number of mentors that can bring different perspectives to you that you can think about, which is a very important idea, because if you don't want to just have one mentor that's going to give you one perspective. It's good to have many mentors that are going to be able to give you the different insights, and then you have the opportunity to think about that and make your decision. Now, the next is how to be a mentor. What I do is I look for motivated individuals, because if you find someone who wants to succeed, then they're going to be very receptive to any feedback and thoughts that you have to give them based upon your experience. And like I said earlier, I'm a natural introvert. So I will look for those introverted achievers, someone who's that wallflower, but if they're given the opportunity, they can bring forward some incredible thoughts and ideas. And then the next is the, you know, individuals facing change. And the quote here, none of us has gotten where we are solely by pulling ourselves up from our own bootstraps. We got here because someone bent down and helped us. And I can say that's definitely true for me. So if we move forward to the next slide. Now, this is my fifth and final attribute, which really coincides with what people had on the last polling question, what people thought had really made an impact on their career. I absolutely agree with that. And I will tell you that in my case, this has been what has driven me in so many situations. And you want to have that determination to push through to the next level, persevere through the obstacles, and then have that resilience to bounce back. And so I think, what I've seen is so many people may stop at that first or second obstacle at meeting their goal, and they'll say, this is too hard, and they won't continue to push through. And this quote here, I love, it says, persevere. You never know how close you are to turning the corner, which is so true. So if we advance to the next slide, which is our last, I think it's our last polling question. Based upon these 5 attributes that we've talked about, what attribute are you currently struggling with the most? Being good at what you do, but never satisfied. Adding value and looking ahead. Building a strong, adaptable team. Developing alliances, personal and strategic, or maintaining the determination, perseverance, and resilience. So we'll give it a minute, because if you want the CPE credit, you need to answer 3 of the 4 polling questions. So definitely answer those so you can get your CPE. Okay, does it look like everyone's been able to answer the questions? Okay, we have a pretty good mix here. Developing alliances. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that one. And that's 30%, because what happens is, if you talk about the demands of our time, we don't always have the time, and we don't think about, we think about, oh, I've got to get all this done, and we don't think about the importance of developing those alliances. So that's very true. And the others are pretty much even across the board for the others. So very interesting. And then, okay, so I want to leave time for some questions, but let me just talk a bit about the last couple of slides here. Maintain that determination, perseverance, and resilience. Sometimes you have to maintain that emotional control. And I've experienced many situations where my emotional control has been tested, but I think it's important that we are able to step back and think about the situation and how we can manage it. And I think, in today's world, with this cancel culture, there are a lot of people out there that are very critical. So we need to think about this and find out how can we step back and handle it. And my advice is to use that criticism to improve ourselves and prove that critic wrong by our actions and how we respond to this. And you're always going to have people that are not not your supporters. So we have to understand how to address those. And I love this quote here: we are defined by our actions and judged by our reactions. Wow, yeah. So if we move to the next slide, I want to just quickly finish up here. And, you know, a lot of people ask me, what, should they ask for what they want? And that may be, should you ask for that increase in pay, a promotion, another job? And my answer to that is yes, but. You know, if you are a high performer, you want to think about this from the perspective of the boss. You know, I've seen so many high performers that say, I'm going to leave this company because I didn't get what I wanted. Well, they also didn't tell people what they wanted. And so I think it's important to have those conversations, but think about it from your boss's perspective. The boss is there to make sure that the organization runs effectively. And if you're going to ask for a promotion, you got to think about it, from what their perspective is. Are you ready for that promotion? And have you gone above and beyond to receive the promotion or the raise? Do you have those skills and aptitude to be successful in the next role? And if you're asking for a raise, is it at market rate? Now, you may not get a yes to your question, or it may come over time. But and when you may know now doesn't mean no for forever. But if you do get that no, that's a no for sure, but at least you now know, and you can adjust your career goals or what your next move will be based on that. If you don't go after what you want, you will never have it. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. If you don't step forward, you're always in the same place. So true. So if we move to the next slide, this is just a summary of what I see as the 5 attributes. And I'm just going to quickly go through those. The first is to be good at what you do, but never satisfied. That gets you in the door. The second is to add value and look ahead. That gets you at the table. And then build a strong, adaptable team, which gets you the A team with those exceptional results. And the fourth is build alliances, personal and strategic, have each other's back. And the fifth is determination, perseverance, and resilience. Don't give up on your mission. And if all else fails, that bonus attribute is to laugh. We all do funny things, and it's best just to laugh at those. We all make mistakes. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. And if something that I said sparked an interest, I have more details and examples in my book, The 5 Attributes to a Successful Career, which is on Amazon. But I'll stop there, see if we have any questions or thoughts or comments.
Yeah, we have a few. First off, if everyone could stick around to the end again, we've randomly chosen our 4 winners of a signed copy of Carla's book, so you can read more about this. But the first question we'll go to is Sally asked, you mentioned being an introvert and finding your voice. Can you provide additional examples on what has helped you to improve or develop in this area?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, a lot of it is just forcing yourself to do the presentations. And also, like in meetings, what I would do is what I mentioned is I would try to get the material in advance. And I would think about the material. If I was going to participate in the meeting, I'd think about the material and think about, questions that I might want to ask or how I want to present myself around that particular topic. So I think those are things. And, I also took the Dale Carnegie class, which is the class on, it's a class that it's over, I think, a 12-week period, and you go once a week, and it's a great class. And you don't have to necessarily do Dale Carnegie, but it was a great one for me to really understand my my skill sets and get up and do those presentations in a safe environment.
Great. Next one, Casey said, I loved what you mentioned about minimizing the meetings. What alternatives do you practice so a team, possibly remote, still retains important updates and new information that is being passed down?
Yeah, I've read recently that one of the most effective things to do this, and I've started doing it, is keep your meeting, especially if it's virtual, keep it to 20 minutes. And then that way you get on the meeting, you get accomplished what you need to get accomplished. Everyone knows that you don't have a lot of time. So it's much more direct and efficient and effective if you kind of keep it to that 20 minutes. And then you build that cadence over time of, let's be more effective if we need to get together and have those conversations.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you to everyone for participating. Now we're going to announce the 4 winners. We have Judith Fu, Lorraine Terry, James Hampton, and Susan Marks. So you guys have all won a signed copy of Carla's book. I will be reaching out to you for your information to get that to you. And I think that's it. So thank you very much, Carla. We really appreciate it. Anything else you want to add?
No, this was great. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy to, if you'd like for me to have a discussion in your organization or to drill down into any one of these particular topics, I'm happy to do that. So, this was only an hour and we could go on any one of these topics for a lot more time. So, but thank you for participating and being available for this.
All right. Thank you all so much.